Hey Grim, how you doing? Having a good day? You are not late. In fact, I am late today. I think, I think it might be a little bit thin today. Um, so, because it's funny, I can almost always tell just by how many people like or retweet whenever I send out the announcement. Hey TMKF, welcome. With your new vest set up, shit. I think you sent me a message. I haven't seen it yet. I was hurrying to get this thing put together. Oh man, that looks awesome. I love that. I love the grim you got on the front too. That's so good. That's very cool. Hey Elisa, how you doing? Welcome, welcome. Hey everybody, happy happy Chinese New Year. Yeah, that's good, Elisa. I'm glad. Oh shit! Yeah, the image of you going outside to listen to my stream is very funny to me. Happy Lunar New Year, Vicini. Happy Year of the Ox. It's gonna be a good one, I think. A lot better than last year. So yeah, another Friday, another Gomer stream. Oh, your Year of the Ox, Grim? That you better be careful saying that because I know exactly how old you are now. Because it repeats every 12 years, so you're either 23 or 24. Um, yeah, it was kind of fun. Went down to Chinatown today. Very chill. Thinking about getting some Chinese food tonight. Chinese New Year is really fun. I don't know um, if y'all have ever lived in a place with a big Chinese population, but I've lived in a couple, and it's all like the parades, the dragon dancing. I just love all that shit. Hey, Kenny Powers, welcome. It's good to see you. It's been a little while. Hey, Jamie, I I blow a kiss to you as well. uh, yeah, at least I don't know how old you are, but yeah, Grim is a baby compared, although not too young. Um, so that's true, Grim. That is true. I have seen your guns with the serial numbers. Oh shit! Oh, thank you, JL. I appreciate that. Um, it is New Year's for a lot of countries. That's true. I think a lot of people have that the old Chinese calendar, including Vietnam. Um, that's all I can remember that does. It's all good. It's all good, Kenny Powers. I know you've been busy, buddy. I'm glad you're doing well in school, though. That's I think that's really cool. Um, Bitch, Annie, you ain't that young, are you? I hope I don't have any minors watching my stream. Um, are my shoulders good? Why is that? Why are you asking? Also, Korea and Japan. Awesome. Hey, Gunslinger, welcome. Welcome. Um, JL, that's good. That's fantastic. Um, so, Gunslinger, it's interesting you say that about fascist groups. Yeah, I think they're absolutely. They may. I think they could get their aims done. And part of what I'm going to show you today may explain why I think that they may get what they want. Now, if they're ANCAPs or whatever, they don't pay any attention to their ideology, all right? Because the ideology is meaningless. It changes at a flick of a wrist. So I do not hate minors. Damn it, y'all are gonna. I do not hate people who mine in the ground. All right. I also don't hate children, but I like people who mine in the ground, both as a profession and as as an identity, I suppose. You tread lightly. Can't be saying I love MINERS because I'll get in trouble. Um, Darth Aztec, I do not hate them either. The only thing is, this stream is marked 18 plus because I curse a lot and talk about violence and other stuff, and so we got to be careful. So who knows what I might do, but I got to show y'all something. So um, I got a couple of guns. I can't. I decided not to show my real guns on stream, but I got these, so I don't even have to have good trigger discipline with these. Look, I'm holding on to it. Y'all can't stop me. Kids, this is an anti-kids and minor stream. Pow, 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 pow. Yeah. Look at this. Look at this. I'm gonna do all the things you shouldn't do. I have no idea where my muzzle is pointing. Hey, socialist, welcome. This is the new Gomer stream where I'm doing all the bad things. This is naughty Gomer. Hey, Toburo. Yeah, you cannot cancel me. I'm sorry. You cannot cancel me. I am uncancelable. Although there's plenty of people who have tried. Clack, 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 clack. All right, so I'll bring these out whenever I need to. This is going to be for more like fun streams, I think, though, because when I'm talking about actual U.S. war crimes, it's not going to be too fun to be bringing out Nerf guns. Naughty Gomer. You save this clip for the future? Save it all you want. I'll teach Gomer's anti-4 rules of gun safety. Point your gun anywhere. Put your finger on the trigger wherever you want. Evil Gomer. Oh, thank you, Jamie. I appreciate that. All right. Well, that was fun. I wanted to have a little bit of levity, a little bit of lightness before we get into some really heavy shit. Countrywide Nerf Wars sounds really fun. Honestly, I tell you what, Kenny Powers, I miss Nerf Wars from college. That was one of the most fun things. So simple, so beautiful, so sweet, Sac Nom. I don't know what that is, Slack UFO, but keep on doing it. All right, so bad stuff that the U.S. has done abroad and at home. All right. So the bad stuff that we're talking about today is propping up dictators, doing coups, funding paramilitary regimes, and basically doing a bunch of shit that is completely illegal. Chat rules. Yeah, hell yeah. So this is a lot of stuff that from the book Killing Hope by William Bloom. It's a good book. He also wrote Democracy, America's Deadliest Export. He wrote Rogue State. He's really good. He's got a lot of good stuff, and I recommend reading these books. They're actually not as depressing as they might seem. And Democracy, America's Deadliest Export is cheaper than Killing Hope, and he just is really sarcastic the entire time in the book, so I think that's pretty good. Killing Hope, however, you can read part 1 on the CIA website. It's literally a PDF on the CIA website, which is very funny for me. Hey, Tempest Lord Rayhan, welcome. A lot of people have given me shit about recommending going to the CIA website for finding a PDF copy of a book. But let me tell y'all something. If you're worried about getting a virus from going to the CIA website, that's foolishness. You know where you get viruses from? The number one type of website for getting a virus? Church websites. All the CIA has to do is hack into a normal website, right? Or maybe like your local Antifa homepage website, right? Anything like that. All they have to do is hack into one of those to install trackers. They don't have to worry about people coming onto the CIA website. All right, so that's just my opinion. I don't think it's that dangerous. I got the PDF of this book from the CIA website. I mean, some hackers do put porn stuff up, but yeah, I'm just talking about trackers and stuff like that. Hey, Sosa, welcome. So let's get started, all right? CIA and military did a bunch of attacks on sovereign nations. Now, why is this important? Because a lot of times, and this is something that we don't talk about enough, a lot of times there have been actual wars against communists perpetrated by CIA. Sometimes it was through funding. Sometimes, when I say sometimes, I mean many times, it was through putting actual American soldier boots on the ground. Now we know about a lot of them, but maybe y'all don't know about all of them, so I'm going to do some of them that y'all might be surprised about. It's a party in the CIA. So I put my guns up, singing my song, butterflies fly away. So yes, this is talking about installing democracy abroad, which absolutely is bullshit because every single one of the things I'm going to go over was put up in democratically. Every single government that they tried to overthrow was democratically elected, even the ones that came after a military engagement. So you got to understand that all communist countries have had democratic elections from the get-go. So a couple of them are going to be, you'll be like, oh, well, I don't know about democracy there, but I'm going to show you a bunch of them where it's like literally a stable government elected a lefty kind of president, and the CIA had them assassinated. So get ready for it. Why did I know all the lyrics? Why do you think I knew all the lyrics, Darth Aztec? Because they rule. Come on, come at me. T. Griff, yes, exactly. We're going to put big quotation marks around democracy. And the thing is, what I really want is for y'all to think about this from a point of view of this shit is illegal, it's wrong, right? And it's an ongoing war. So if you are a communist, you are part of a global struggle. It is not just a struggle in your country. It's not a struggle against Republicans. It's not a struggle against your local fash coming out and with Trump 2020 flags and all kind of stuff like that. This is an ongoing global struggle against the CIA and against other groups that are anti-communist. We have to stop thinking about this as like shadowy and secretive and like clandestine. A lot of times, what happens is they have they have a pretty basic playbook that they go with, right? And they try to do things secretly, but a lot of these secrets are not even secrets, right? It's just that the media has taught us to view these things as like super woo-woo scary, you know what I mean? And honestly, we need to stop thinking of it that way. We give too much credence to them with that, right? What they do is they flood right-wing paramilitary groups with money, they distribute propaganda, and they do their own clandestine activities, right? It's literally just money, training, stuff like papers and movies and things, and on-the-ground boots. That's all it is, right? So I want to demystify some of the CIA for y'all today because it's just not that mysterious. It's literally an ongoing war that we're a part of as communists. So yes, Bay of Pigs. Hey, Lanny, welcome, welcome. I am glad that you are here. I'm glad you don't have to just lurk today. So, how to engage in violence with Nerf guns. That's right. Blah, 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 blah. Watch, I'm going to get banned from stream for mishandling Nerf guns. They're going to be like, it's still violent. You can't do that. But I bought these specifically so I could misbehave with them. I hope I don't get in trouble. Commie foam blaster. That's right. Draw. So let's begin. All right, I'm going to start off with the USSR. He wasn't wearing safety glasses. Okay, so a lot of people think that the Bolsheviks had a war and took over power, and that was that. Then the Cold War kind of started, and there was no U.S. boots on the ground trying to fight against the Bolsheviks. Totally incorrect. Soup can launcher, hell yeah. Tempest Lord, I am thinking of the children. I'm thinking of how fun the children are going to think when they see this. They're going to be, that's such a cool guy. Anyway, actually, that's not the case. In 1918, right after the Bolshevik Revolution, they tried to flood the newly formed country with U.S. troops. 13,000 troops were on the ground in the USSR trying to do all kind of stuff, right? They were doing clandestine operations. They were trying to train counter-revolutionary troops, and they just failed, right? Because they weren't ready. They were not ready for how strong the Bolsheviks actually were, mostly because Lenin had kind of invented guerrilla warfare at that point, had done some pretty amazing stuff. Even if you don't like Lenin, the way that he revolutionized the use of propaganda for guerrilla warfare, where he put propaganda troops with the fighting troops together and had them go throughout the countryside and mess with the big armies while they propagandized to the people. It was the first time that had been synthesized into a formula, right? So U.S. troops just couldn't handle it, right? They were used to fairly conventional warfare. How could anyone not like Lenin? Well, quite a few people don't. I am not one of them. I think he's all right, but go on Twitter for long enough and people will be very anti-Lenin. So, because they fail, the CIA immediately begins a propaganda campaign, like literally that year. All right. So, in this propaganda campaign, the CIA says, and I'm talking about in all the major newspapers and magazines of the time. Hell yeah, Darth Aztec. So New York Times, the Times, Reader's Digest, and so they put out legit, actual articles that said shit like they were eating babies, they were nationalizing all women as sex workers, they were planning an invasion of Europe, and then another article said India, another article said Japan, another article said Persia. So they said they were going to invade like literally everywhere, right? This is all, mind you, in like 1918. It is a brand new government, so they are talking about some wildness, right? Stuff that there's no possible way that it could have happened within a year. You want to know that? That's very, very kinky, Laney. Yeah, exactly, TMKF. You can say all of this is total bullshit. I mean, poverty increased after the fall of the U.S., trafficking, absolutely. But we all know that this is all bullshit, right? 91 times in the first year, there was an article put out saying that the Soviet Union was going to fail, or had failed, was actively failing, right? So it's really interesting to me that like they're actively fighting on the ground, they're waging this propaganda war both back home and there, right? And they're just getting their asses kicked. To be honest, this is one place where the CIA fucking ate dirt. Um, the Russians were like "Das vidanya, tovarish," and yeah, Truman said he planned to join with the Nazis if the Russians had begun winning against them. Now, later on in the war, he couldn't do that because of different things that had happened. But if the Nazis had only attacked Russia, Truman was planning to see who was going to win, and would support the one who was doing the worst. So that like that, and this is all on record. Nothing that I say today is a conspiracy theory. It is all shit that is on record. All right. So T. Griff. Part of the purpose of what I'm saying right now is that we talk about Lenin as a poor leader, but this is in Lenin's first year as the leader of. This is from the proto-CIA clue, but this is proto-CIA. Oh boy, two hit good. I don't know what that is. Oh yeah, there you go. There's a quote. So, yeah, this is from proto-CIA. So I do want to make that clear. You are correct that that the CIA didn't technically exist until it was formed by what's his name Hoover, right? But they absolutely had these troops, right? So continuing. So going into China. Now, so what I wanted to say there real quick about Russia is that people talk about how paranoid Lenin is, but you can see they had boots on the ground, 13,000 U.S. troops for a couple of years trying to attack the Bolsheviks and take them out of power, right? So there was a reason for Lenin to be paranoid. It wasn't that he was just seeing monsters in the closet everywhere he went. The CIA, not the CIA, the proto CIA was actively trying to attack him. All right. Now from here on out, it's the actual CIA. So you didn't miss much, JL. Just I was saying that like Lenin had reasons to be quote unquote paranoid. There was a propaganda machine going on and actual boots on the ground from the inception of the Soviet Union. So from here on, thank you for that correction. But from here on, it is all CIA because this is all from the 40s to the 80s. All right. So in China, people also say that Mao was paranoid, right? Well, watch some of this crazy stuff. Okay. The U.S. sends 100,000 troops to support the nationalists against the communists. Now, allegedly, they were trying to support them against the Japanese, but the nationalists were waging a war against the communists at the same time, right? So we will see in just a minute that the goal of Washington the entire time was to fight the communists. So they gave $2 billion, which is worth $20 billion today. This is the most that they gave any group at the time. And like literally it was a huge amount of the war chest was going to China to support these the nationalist fighters. When the nationalist starts to lose, the CIA helps them kill off 28,000 people in Taiwan so that they can make a base. And when we talk about the people getting killed in Taiwan, we're not talking about just soldiers. We're talking about anybody who had any kind of resistance to the nationalist forces invading Taiwan. So they continue to fund the mercenaries in the region. Now get this. They had mercenary groups that they paid, that formed up, that attacked China. And then the CIA was like, hey, China is not really falling, so let's go attack other countries. So other Southeast Asian countries, these same groups of people were sent to different countries. So Burma, Laos, right? And when we talk about CIA operatives moving around, sometimes we're talking about America, but sometimes we're talking about simply groups that were wholly controlled by the CIA, right? They funded them, they fed them, they clothed them. They literally just installed CIA people to be their generals, their senior staff, and they had them go around terrorizing the countryside. So the United States has funded terrorist organizations in the Middle East and the Far East for a very long time, right? I'm talking about, since forever, but in the modern world, they've done it since the end of World War II. So, oh yeah, and I'm TMKF. Because I focused on South America so much last time, I kind of didn't go into South America so much this time. But yeah, exactly like what happened in South America in many different countries, right? Operation Condor. So Gunslinger. One very interesting thing is a lot of this money is not from taxes. Some of it certainly is, like definitely money goes to the Pentagon, and from the Pentagon it goes to the CIA. And to the clandestine forces abroad. But a lot of this money is raised by regular ass companies, which you'll see when we get to Italy. And a lot of it is raised by selling drugs and stuff. Yeah, black ops money. So exactly, Two Hit Good. It's literally like they, CIA sold crack in black communities in order to fund their Contra wars. That's all real. You know what I mean? Like, that's all real. It's not, none of that stuff is a conspiracy theory, but people make you feel like you're a conspiracy theorist when you talk about it, simply because it's not taught in school and everybody kind of glances at you, say that's not real, right? But that's because of a very strong propaganda campaign that has gone on in the US. And when I say a strong propaganda campaign, I literally mean billions of dollars dumped in burying the information, and the most important thing here, connecting that information to other actual conspiracy theories that are verifiably false. It is very easy to make 100 different websites that connect, like the CIA to aliens, connect the CIA to a new world order, stuff like that, right? So it discredits these things that are exactly like you say, TMKF. open secrets. They're declassified documents. It's stuff that's like it's as on the record as the invasion of Normandy. It's as on the record as the Declaration of Independence, right? These are things that they're non-controversial, but the CIA has spent a lot of money to make it seem controversial, right? So let's keep going. 1951 and 1954, the Chinese catch over 100 CIA agents parachuting into China. And what you have to understand is there was no war with China, right? This was an act. This is an act of war on a sovereign nation. So here's some really bad stuff. Okay, in 1945, the U.S. gives amnesty to the Japanese biological warfare scientists of Unit 781, I think. I always forget, but yeah. And then in 1952, whenever the communists are actually really starting to whip up on the Kuomintang, they do covert bombing raids of bacteria bombs and pest insects, right? Unit 751, thank you, JL. So yeah, isn't this wild? Look at that picture. Like that is an actual picture of the bombs that they use. They did biological warfare against the Chinese, right? So we have had a hot war against China when it was in its inception, right? And this is something that, like, of course, is never taught in history books and such. But we literally use Japanese war criminals to make biological weapons. Unit 731, thank you. To make these biological weapons to use against China, right? So it's wild. So in the mid 1950s, the CIA starts creating Tibetan guerrilla training camps, right? So when we talk about the war or the occupation of Tibet by China, a lot of the Free Tibet campaign type stuff started with the CIA. Now, whether you think a region should have independence from a mother country or not, that's a different story. But thank you, Raven Wynn, for following. I appreciate that. Oh, shit. A Kiwi subscribed for 4 months at Tier 1. Shit, thank you so much. But it's important to note that the CIA has wanted it to happen, has promoted it happening, has trained the militants illegally, right? Has been in the country illegally training people to do bad shit. So when they talk about things like terrorists in Xinjiang, then it's not just a lie that communists made up in order to make China look good. It's like this is the kind of shit that the CIA does, right? So it goes from very obvious to kind of complicated. So that's in a lot of reasons. That's one of the many reasons why I don't talk about modern day socialist countries on my stream very much, simply because it is not as simple as they do bad thing, they should be taken out. The CIA gives you a ton of disinformation and has been a part of disinformation campaigns from the get-go. You know what I mean? So since before it was the CIA, since it was a different organization, they were doing this stuff. So in the mid-1950s, the U.S. Army begins making sarin gas to recapture Korea. All right? So China is always painted as paranoid. Mao is always painted as paranoid. And they talk about the purges in USSR and in China, right? But the truth is they were being attacked constantly, right? Like with biological and chemical war, they were being propagandized. They were having terrorist groups put up against their borders constantly. All right. So continuing, Greece. Now this is very intense. All right. So if you don't like torture, tune out for a second. But after the World War II, communists start getting popular in Greece. So the U.S., again, helps the national forces against them. Nationalists, the far right-wing forces, right? Yes, exactly, Black Knight. If there's anything bad that's happened, there's a very good chance the CIA is involved. Absolutely. So we can just call them our enemies, our actual natural enemies, because they are. They will always try to attack us. They will try to fund the people against us. So one day, Boogaloo, if they get big enough, is going to start getting CIA money. Chloe, thank you. Clue, thank you so much for subscribing. I really appreciate that. Kenny Powers, if you want information on this, William Bloom is the author that I'm citing for this stuff. Killing Hope is this book. And you want some gun action? Darth Aztec. Okay, I can do the I can add my guns to the shuffle. How about that? Yeehaw! Killing Hope, and then Democracy, America's deadliest export. Yes, Internet Rascal, the red cowboy mod. So in Greece, so Raven Win, thank you so much. It's all good, Kenny Power. Jimbo Dog, this shit makes me so happy to have these now. It makes me laugh so much because I can finally act like the Yosemite Sam that I always wanted to be. So yeah, here we go, dancing for Raven Win. So getting back at it, Greece. The U.S. funds the right-wing forces against regular people. The communists who are getting democratically voted in, right? That's the important part here, is that the communists are getting democratically voted in. And eventually, the U.S. funds the entire anti-communist army. This is very funny. They fund the entire army down to their clothes and their food. It was their army, right? Greece had a nationalist right-wing army that was funded 100% by the U.S. government, all right? They take over all operations, and of course, they defeat the communists after 3 years because they just flooded the area with money, because communism in traditional Europe, right? Not in the far Eastern Europe, but in what is oftentimes considered the Europe people know, right? That was unacceptable to the U.S. government, so they would flood it with money, troops, anything they needed to stop it, right? So through the puppets, they arrest over 4,000 communists. Many end up getting executed, and Papadopoulos, an actual CIA asset, becomes the leader of the country. So what did Papadopoulos do? Well, here's where it gets nasty. So if torture bothers you, then tune out for a second. Here's what they did to people. They would beat the soles of their feet with pipes to break the bones of their feet. They would do sex torture to men and women. They would gag people in a lot of different ways. This is kind of like the proto water torture. Put a filthy rag soaked in urine in their throat. They would tear out their hair. They would jump on them, and they'd pull out their toenails and fingernails. All this happened in Greece, right? When we think of this shit, a lot of times we think of it happening in South America or Asia or Africa, right? We think about we oftentimes have this stuff kind of put away in a foreign, different, the other kind of country, right? But no, the point of this is that it has happened all over the world. It has happened in the United States. It has happened in Europe, right? The CIA doesn't change its methods just because it's on quote unquote civilized soil. You know what I mean? So like, if you ever start feeling like this stuff is a problem for other countries and other people, you have to look at your own internalized racism and imperialism, right? Because this is just the stuff that they do, right? This is stuff that we should get very comfortable talking about, because it is literally just their regular bag of tricks that they use again and again, honestly, without changing it that much, right? Especially after Operation Condor, they kind of finalized a lot of this shit. Yes, they are evil bastards, absolutely. So my goal today is to make this seem boring almost, right? To get it to show you how often it happens again and again and again all over the world, that it's just like, these are our enemies, right? These are the people who are our enemies. This is what they do. We have to be on our watch against them, and we have to understand that America is the bad guy. Straight up, America is the bad guy. So, moving on to the Philippines. The communists were the ones who fought off the Japanese for the most part, right? Just kind of like the communists in China did, but though they funded more in China, the Chinese communists were able to stick around and survive, right? Thank you, Kush Dog. I appreciate that. So In the Philippines, they funded them less, about single order of magnitude less, about 1/10 of what they funded the Chinese communists. But they started using more psychological warfare, and that is part of the key to their success. So they use local religion as a tool. What do? They they spread rumors that the communists were vampires, because at the time the people in the countryside in the Philippines were very scared of vampires. They would wait for cloudy days and then they'd fly planes around. And you got to understand that like flying planes is like a normal thing, was very rare at this time still, right? So when they would fly planes into the clouds and they would broadcast from the clouds to literally act like the voice of God, curses on anyone who helped out the communists. And so this was so effective, it scared the local people so much that they wouldn't support the communists, and so they literally starved them out, right? Communists are vampires projecting again. Yep, agreed. so so this is also where they started a lot of their false flag attacks. So they would dress up as the communists, the communist army, and they would just go do terrorism. They would go and attack regular countryside people. And they drugged a lot of the politicians. This is they would undermine their speeches, like they would cut off their speeches, drug them so that they looked silly while they were up there, right? Thank you, Kush Dog. I appreciate that. And yeah, so it was a huge problem. And eventually, of course, they beat the communists and they installed their own people. How do they install their own people? They just pay them off, right? It doesn't take that much money to buy off people. So, um, not even hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes. It can be a lot less. And once they've bought you off a little bit, then they bought you off forever because they have evidence of having bought you off, right? So then they can apply the screws because you're now a CIA asset. If you've taken even $1,000 from them, you're a CIA asset, right? So yeah, especially broke people, exactly. So they have a game plan. The game plan is send in money, send in troops, train the local troops, give any kind of propaganda you can, which includes quote unquote education to local conservative organizations. They get local people to teach them what will work on the local people, because the whole idea of using the local religions was from the local right-wing government people telling them what to do. They didn't come up with that by themselves. The Filipinos told them. So yeah, it's very, very, very simple stuff. Yeah, Tempest. I agree. It is sickening that these people use religion to their own ends, and you'll see it happen a couple of times here. But I think it's important for religious people to do your own counter propaganda. Y'all religious people are like, I can't go into churches and talk to religious people. It's just not my thing. But you can go in and you can tell your truth to other people, right? So I think counter propaganda, telling the truth to people, talking about how Jesus was a communist, that kind of thing is very important. It's brave. It's difficult, especially in the current climate where so many church people are, wildly conservative. But it's important because we can't. Personally, I think that right now, with as religious as America is, we're never going to have a atheist state, right? State atheism isn't going to happen in America. And we need to have religious people on our side. You're valuable, So I think you telling your truth to your people is important, and showing how despicable, how cynical the government is when it uses religion against people is very important. So, Italy, Gladio. All right, now this is very interesting to me. All right. Yeah, Darth Aztec, atheism is growing, but it's not the number one. I'll tell you that. It's not even the number one in a lot of places in Europe yet, um, and who knows if it will be in the United States. I think people cling to religion in hard times, absolutely, and hard times are coming. Hard times are going to continue to come. So anyway, this is not a talk shit on religion stream, I promise. This is a I support my religious friends stream, and I think it's beautiful when you're able to teach the truth to your friends, who are also religious. So I don't know if y'all have ever heard of Gladio, but this shit sounds like a conspiracy theory, but it's real. It's documented. The only place where this is a conspiracy theory is that the Italians said Gladio was all over Europe. It was proven to be in Italy, but the Italians said it isn't just us. Italians said it's in Europe, in Germany, it's in Europe in the UK, and I think they might have named a couple of other countries. But basically, the idea was after World War II, the U.S. government left behind a bunch of agents all over, and they were like sleeper cells. So what they would do is if ever there was a rising communist movement in that country, then these people would take them out. So they left weapons, they left money, and they had these secret organizations that were still communicating back to the U.S. even then, right? So we're not taught about these troubles in the European countries outside of like Italy, or not Italy, outside of like Ireland, right? We know about the IRA kind of in the United States, but we don't have any idea of like the extremely violent conflicts that happened in Italy and Greece in the into the 80s, right? So Italy had was very close to an anarchist revolution a couple of times, and the communists gained power in Italy. Yeah, it is stranger than fiction, Grim. I agree, because it's like when you haven't heard of this stuff and it seems so big, it seems so earth-shattering, it almost starts to trip your conspiracy theory switch. You know what I mean? It starts to sound like, is this really what happened? But the truth is, they got a vested interest in not knowing this. So of course, you didn't hear about it in school. Of course, you didn't see anything about it on TV, right? The idea that the U.S. government funded actual, like literal neo-Nazis all over Europe to fight back against communism, it's like they could never admit that, right? They could fucking never admit that. So yeah, but there's the thing is, the reason I'm using Killing Hope, this particular book, is that he gives tons of source work for all this. None of this stuff is just his suppositions. He gives article after article, proof after proof that all the stuff that he's talking about is real, which I think is important. So there are pictures, there's testimony, right? All of this was was talked to at the level of the UN. Tyranno saying, especially when it's imperialists write your fiction. Yes, I agree. I mean, that's one of them funny things where I want y'all to think about one thing. Before I get into Gladio, hey, Comrade Clever Name, welcome. So if it wasn't for how chaotic the Italian political system is, you'd be confused. Yeah, well, the CIA is a part of that. So I do want to say one thing about Tyranno's point here, because also it is like, yeah, why haven't I ever read like other books about this? Why isn't this used as like the plot of TV shows? Why isn't why haven't I read novels that had like Gladio as like a foundational part of it, right? And the answer is all the CIA has to do, or the government or whatever, all they have to do is say to one or two publishers at the top level, they say, hey, if y'all publish things about these embarrassments, like if you publish a bunch of exposés about these embarrassments, then we'll do bad things, right? So maybe we'll kill you or your family or whatever, right? They say that kind of stuff, but more often they say things like, we'll just make it hard for you to do business. We'll send the tax people after you constantly. We'll prop up your competition and make it to where things just kind of happen to fall apart for you a lot of time. We'll make phone call after phone call to make your life difficult. And so those people are like, well, okay, so we won't worry about that. We will just not publish the shit that makes y'all look bad. So they don't have to spend billions of dollars to control the narrative with things like Hollywood and book publishing houses. Hey, Peach Flavored Jess. Hey, Exquisiter. Welcome, y'all. They don't have to do that kind of stuff. So when we talk about conspiracies, right, at the highest levels, right, it's very simple for the government to to simply say, hey, we'll make your lives hard if you tell these kind of stories. Just everything on this list is off limits, and if you stick to stories on this list, the ones that make our government look good, the ones that serve as, in a lot of ways, propaganda for us. Hey, we'll even let you use our equipment. You want to use a Black Hawk helicopter? You want to use like Humvees and shit? Well, we'll let you use it for free if you just tell our stories. And so, of course, these people are like, okay, I can either make money or I can get fucked with. And they'll be like, okay, I guess I'll make money. You know what I mean? It's all about class interest a lot of times. Um, they literally are just protecting their class interests, as in they want to make money, they want to continue to be rich, and that overcomes any kind of left-leaning feelings or morality that they have. Very easy. Yeah, Lisa, absolutely. They're always, anytime they talk about the Black Panthers or whatever, they're always showing them as like aggressive, angry black folks, or nowadays it's going to be like woke black folks, and they totally leave out the fact that they were Marxist-Leninists and that it was a revolutionary organization. Always, 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 always. Or they like just a little bit is on that, but the people who are really serious about that are shown as like agitators, or they're shown as like the extremists who end up taking down the organization. You know what I mean? It's not that hard for them to guide this narrative. So in a lot of ways, that's why I think that people who are doing independent writing work, people who are publishing this kind of stuff, people who even write novels or make independent films that expose this kind of stuff, are really doing important work. You know, I think that a lot of times libs have a tendency to think that they're doing important work when they do stuff that's like about representation and showing the struggles of the past alone. But whenever people do actual expose work, or people write stories that have the CIA and the government as the bad guy, it's important propaganda work. So if that's the kind of stuff you do, keep at it, but don't water it down. That's the important part. Do not water it down. Keep it communist. Keep it cool. Yeah. All right. So getting back to Gladio. So they leave behind all these people, right? And using these caches and CIA money, they literally do terrorism in Italy up to 1988. That's right, Exclusive Orbis. I'm armed and totally not dangerous at all. So, literally, like, y'all understand that this is until after I was born, right? 1988 is after I was born. So, I was literally alive while the CIA was doing terrorist stuff in Italy, like in a thoroughly Western nation, right? Yeah, hell yeah, Darth Aztec. So here's some wildness. The CIA funded the Christian Democrats, who is like the main, like one of the right-wing folks in Italy. And it gets very weird if you look into the history of Gladio, like who was being funded, who was being propped up. It's very weird. But the CIA also got ExxonMobil to fund another $46 million. Now you may be asking, why the fuck would an oil company be concerned with the government of Italy, right? Yeah, exactly. To hit good as wow. Yeah, Black Knight, exactly. They're always avoiding that kind of truth. So anyway, I am not old. I think it's very interesting to say that there are reasons Exxon would be funding politics in Italy. Now, besides any kind of oil reserves that they might have or have control over, these big companies like Exxon that have a ton of extra cash, at times they have, literal billions of dollars in cash that's just lying around, right? The CIA works with these companies, and these companies can trust that the CIA is going to represent them abroad. If they need oil reserves, if they need to control another country's oil reserves, then the CIA is going to try to affect this kind of stuff. Oh, there you go, JL. Exactly. Um, the oil routes go through the Mediterranean, which includes Italian water. So that's certainly part of it for sure. Hey, good Howard, welcome. I haven't seen you in a while. So yeah. I just think it's very interesting, and y'all should think about why ExxonMobil is literally giving as much as the CIA to influence politics in Italy. And um, continuing, Italy actually testified that these paramilitary right wing groups that actually worked with neo Nazis and fascists, they did covert operations up till the 90s, right? So Italian government officials testified to the truth of this. This is not conspiracy theory. This is certifiable fact. All right. Um, so the other thing that these same people testified is that these kind of groups doing false flag terrorist attacks existed in Great Britain, Germany, and other European countries. So they were there to protect against an ever actual communist uprising, but they also along the way simply fought and did terrorist attacks and posed as left-wing groups. So some of the attacks that we have heard about, some of the left-wing terrorism that we've heard about in, say, Ireland, right? It very well may have been one of these Gladio type organizations. So very weird. Yeah, this is from Killing Hope, Slack UFO. Hey, Toadster, welcome. All right, continuing. The Congo. Now, this one depresses me. So, you know that the United States and Europe is terrified and has always been terrified of black people coming together and waking up. Fighting back, right? And I shouldn't say waking up. Black people are way more cognizant of what's going on in the world than people like me are. But I just mean I should say waking up to their own power, right? So yeah, every time it has happened, especially when a African president has started talking about the conditions of black people in the United States, right? Yeah, exactly. To hit good, exactly. But it does happen sometimes, right? And so they always are terrified of it when it does happen. They're always trying to push it back down. So, yeah, Lumumba is a politician in the Congo, and he's not even that powerful at first. But the U.S. and Belgium and eventually NATO get terrified of Lumumba because he is a passionate speaker. Um, he is very popular, and he's saying that black people here and abroad, as in people in Africa and in the United States, have to stand up for themselves, have to come together. So Pan-Africanism terrifies the United States government, terrifies them, right? So they set up a plan to do a coup, or well, first they set up a plan to fight back against the freedom fighters of the Congo who were fighting against the Belgian military, and then eventually they try to set up different coups against the democratically elected presidents, right? So literal biological weapons were sent over to the Congo to try to take out Lumumba. So they had viruses that were prepped, and they were like local viruses. So they grew these local viruses, and then they would transfer them over in diplomat bags. You're not allowed to look inside diplomat bags whenever you're crossing country borders, right? So yeah, that is good too. Good. That is a really good point. So yeah, they literally try to murder this man before he's even president, right? But he's smart. Lumumba's very smart, and he knows he's got a target on his back, so he's like constantly moving. He's very careful, and they can't catch him. He goes on the run. Well, what the CIA does then is they start working with a local right-wing guy who wants to be dictator, Mobutu, and what they do is they do surveillance. So they start using all kinds of different surveillance techniques in order to figure out where Lumumba is. And eventually they do, right? So eventually they figure out where Lumumba is, and they organize a roadblock, and Mobutu captures him, and eventually they execute him. So after that, what they do is they fund multiple warring groups in the Congo to destabilize the country. So they don't fund the left wing groups, but they fund multiple different right wing groups that will fight each other and the left wing groups in order to in order to mess with the country altogether. So this is a very important point as well. When people in a very racist way talk about how Africa is underdeveloped, well, shit, man, when they've had the CIA literally funding different warlords to destabilize a country, of course, yeah, exactly. They're just trying to maximize casualties, like you say, Grim. Of course, they have um, unstable government, and they have bad infrastructure, and they have difficulty in organizing and trusting, right? So they they do this to allow Western companies to control these governments, and Western governments to do aid, quote unquote aid, that is really just debt enslavement, right? So yeah, exactly, good, Howard. Underdeveloped is just overexploited. But this is one of the tools. This is one of the tools. By destabilizing, by funding different military groups that will attack each other, it's very easy for them to destabilize a country to the point where the Western companies can go in and mess with them. Right? The exploitation comes after the country has a government that cannot defend itself. Very simple. It's very simple. So this is in Indonesia. I don't know where the title for this one went, but this is Indonesia. So Sukarno is a very popular anti-imperialist president. All right. Queer of Peace, we are talking about different U.S. attacks on democracy in different countries around the world. So the CIA wants Sukarno dead, right? So they infiltrate ahead of time, like I'm talking decades ahead of time. They had infiltrated these different levels of the government. So what that means is they caught like young aspiring politicians, and they said, "Hey, check it out, buddy. We'll give you money, and we will give you information about your opponents. We will help rig elections anywhere we can. All you got to do is help us out." So it's kind of an open secret in the country that, like, if you want to do well in politics, you either have to be really good or you have to get in with the CIA, right? So different people are actually fighting with each other, not like arguing with each other, but like trying to swoop in and get these CIA contracts, right? So in a lot of other countries, it has been an open secret for a long time that you could get CIA money if you just voted the way they wanted. TMK, if you're going to bed, good night, buddy. I'm glad glad you came by. So a coup happens in Indonesia, and like going for a scholarship. Exactly, Grim. It's literally like competing for a scholarship. That is a great point. So they have a coup, right? And right-wing military group gets into power, led by this totally terrible person named Suharto, right? And over the course of this person's reign, that was entirely backed by the CIA, they kill up to 1 million people, right? Just in Indonesia. Now, some of those were military people, but the majority of these are civilians. And they kill another 200,000 people in East Timor. So how do they do this? Well, they disappear people, and it's not just communists, it's everybody, right? Anybody who's slightly left, so like trade unionists, just regular old academics, nonprofit workers, like people who are just doing aid work, helping out the community, like literal, Meals on Wheels type stuff, like delivering food to poor people and old people and such, right? They literally would go after and kill those kind of people. And the way that this worked is it was a kind of psychological warfare as well. Because when they disappeared them, you never knew if they were coming back. Sometimes they'd come back after a few days, sometimes after a few months, but a lot of times they'd just be executed, and but it would be secret. So once somebody got disappeared, you never knew. And if you talked about it, you were likely to get disappeared yourself afterwards. So it created this state of fear where no one wanted to do anything left wing at all, right? All left wing politics totally ceased. And when I say all left wing politics, I mean even like volunteer work, like nice shit, like just delivering meals to old people. But also, um, just all kinds of different people just kind of like clamp down, keep their head down, and it changed the culture of Indonesia. Um, how do I get the sources from this? All of this came from Killing Hope by William Bloom. And he goes into all of his sources, which are many, many, many. The last like 20 pages of the book is just a gigantic list of all the sources that he used for all these different chapters. So, so yeah, there are a lot of different books that go into how like Chile learned from Suharto, like Pinochet learned from Suharto, and how there was a lot of there's a lot of crossover between different dictatorships, and they learned from each other. They did the same techniques of disappearances and torture, and that you can look into deeper, like Jakarta Method is a great book that talks about this, but it just keeps happening again and again. It keeps happening again and again and again. So this is important to note. I'll say it again. We are in a global, persistent war that has been going on for 100 years between capitalists that are propped up by companies and capitalist governments that are owned by these companies and communists. People's um, people's government officials who do not take bribes, who come up from the local people, from normal people, and are oftentimes democratically elected. So it is always capitalism versus democracy. It is always the United States versus democracy. We do not bring democracy to other countries, we take it away, right? So, um, anyway, y'all are talking about good stuff in the comments. I appreciate y'all sharing sources with each other. That's very cool. But yeah, so that's kind of the U.S. brings democracy TM exactly. So that's kind of that's all I had for today. It's kind of a lot to like bring to put all this shit together, to be honest. Um, so so yeah, I'm gonna leave y'all with a couple of thoughts. I may continue this series next week. Um, I may talk about stuff that the U.S. government has done at home, because I talked about the economic warfare abroad. I've talked about the CIA abroad. It may be interesting to talk about all the different ways that the U.S. has attacked left wing movements in the United States. Yeah, kind of a short stream today, just like an hour. But the things that I want y'all to think about is like I've been saying, it's a continuing global war, but another thing that I've said and that I think is worth remembering is that the techniques don't change. They kind of refine their techniques for a little while, but the techniques that are used abroad are almost always give money to people, propagandize people, and then use force whenever it becomes absolutely necessary. Right? Good night, Conrad Clever Name. This is an eternal struggle, exactly, Laney, or just a 100-year struggle. As soon as communism came out, it became the number one threat to the United States, as in not for other countries abroad, but rather the contradictions within the United States has made it always um, ripe for communism, right? We have always been ripe for a communist revolution within our country. And the more people are always saying it'll never happen. People are so afraid, right? But they have dumped tons and tons of money because so many of the contradictions of capitalism are actually clearest at home. Some books have talked about how things like like Settlers talks about how we have a labor aristocracy. But in many ways, the goal of capitalists is to constantly push down everybody, right? So, yes, things are worse overseas. And yes, certainly things are worse even here at home for the colonized nations like the black nation within the United States, the Latina nation within the United States, right? Um, but we have to understand that their goal is to make us all just stressed out enough to the point where um, we will do whatever they say, but not so overworked that we can't have children or um, can't feed ourselves, can't clothe ourselves. And when I say we, I mean the general workforce, right? So yeah, the indigenous nations, exactly, too hit good. Um, so I think that's very important to talk about. That communism can come to the United States. They're terrified of it. They fight it everywhere, but of course they fight it the hardest at home. So people are also paid off at home. People are disappeared, right? A lot of these CIA techniques are used at home as well, like y'all were saying in the chat, killing off our revolutionary leaders here at home. But propaganda is, they spend $2 billion abroad, which equals $20 billion in modern money in China, right? On soldiers and propaganda and everything. How much money do you think they spend here on the same thing? Anything that they've done abroad, they would spend even more money to do here. We have this image that it's always going on elsewhere, but it's not. It happens elsewhere and here, right? So yeah, I think if the Black Panthers would not have been destroyed, I think we would be living in a socialist country. Or I think that the black nation within the United States would possibly have had its freedom. Um, there's a lot of different things that I think are worth thinking about, but normalizing this stuff, yes, it's depressing. Um, I think it's really sad. The first time you go over this stuff, it's like, holy shit, we really are the bad guys. But now now a gunslinger, especially because I know that this is hitting you hard. Now you can say with a very firm heart that I commit to taking down this thing that has killed so many people needlessly. I understand that everything that I was taught when I was a child was propaganda, that almost all of the history that I was taught was false, that I was not taught the important history, and that they have worked very hard to keep these true stories from out of the public mind, which means not necessarily by suppressing them by force, but oftentimes simply by paying people to not write about them, threatening people's livelihoods if they do write about them, right? So, yeah, we are in a battle. We are in a continuing battle, and by simply doing things like joining organizations, organizing your local community, doing mutual aid type stuff, but always maintaining the line that you are a communist, letting people know that you're a communist, getting educated and doing whatever you can to help the movement. You are joining in the fight against this shit, right? You are doing your part. So yeah, that's awesome, Lenny. I'm really glad you started a cadre. That is very cool. Thank you, Gunslinger Webb. I mean, we have to value human life and dignity, and that is fundamentally the difference between the communist and the capitalist. Because we are just regular people, because we have suffered, and that is what turns us into communists, right? It's not just reading a book one time that turns us into a communist. It is continuing to see the suffering around us, suffering ourselves, and having that overcome the propaganda of our childhood, right? Because it's difficult. We don't want to believe a lot of this stuff to be true. We don't want to think of our government as a source of international violence against democracies, but it is. So yeah, I think communists are the ones who bring the care of humans, the demand for dignity to the forefront. Right? We say we're willing to do anything that we have to do in order to protect ourselves and other people. And oftentimes it comes to it. It really comes to it. So we're in a fight, and we are going to do our best in whatever way we possibly can to continue it. So just promise yourself, that you're not going to stand idly by. You're not going to say, well, the government sucks, but I'm just trying to live. Say that you are going to work against it. Say that you're going to try, and you're not just going to try in your youth. You're going to continue to try even as you age, even as you maybe get successful, even as you maybe get money. You're going to continue to do things. You're not going to become an opportunist and start saying things like, maybe we can vote our way to freedom. Maybe we can do something to stop these foreign wars without actually stopping the government. All right. So yeah, that's one of them. That's just one of them things that I think, this reading this book actually made a big difference to me. I always talk about State and Revolution, but Killing Hope and the Shock Doctrine together, because I read these books right around the same time. I was in a DMV actually when I started reading Killing Hope. I was waiting in the goddamn DMV for like an hour, and I just kept reading his book, and yeah, it made me realize it was like it's never going to stop. It is never going to stop. Yeah, queer of peace, exactly. It wakes you up. It makes you realize that unless you do your part, unless you do something, it continues. But if you start doing something, then you're doing what you can, and you're part of the good side, right? So how can I be so cheerful and hopeful? Well, this is what's called revolutionary optimism. A lot of people talk about revolutionary optimism. Um, it doesn't mean that I think because I think it doesn't mean that I think we're going to have communism in my lifetime, right? That's not what it means. It doesn't mean that I believe things that are clearly untrue. But what it means is I look at the state of the world and I no longer have to make excuses for the bad guys. I no longer have to live in this cognitive dissonance of like, oh yeah, we're America and like we're good, but we're also bad, and we bring democracy, but we also don't bring democracy, and this like constant state of confusion that so many people have to live in. Because when people who are not communists read about this shit, they think, oh God, it doesn't make any sense. That can that be? Is this true? Right? But we don't have to live in that place. So the comfort of not living in lies is real. But yeah, Tyrannus says hope is a discipline. One thing we have to say is that there is plenty of evidence that communist revolutions can take hold anywhere where there's suffering, in fully developed nations, in undeveloped nations. We can say that when you really give the people a taste of freedom, a taste of dignity, they grab onto it, right? Oh, that was Angela Davis. Well, hell, I mean that's good. You don't have to take your yeah, you don't have to take credit for it, Angela. But yeah, Angela Davis had a lot of good things to say, no doubt. Um, so, uh, so yeah, that's why I stay, quote unquote cheerful, is because I just know I'm on the side that can live. I'm on the side that can win. That I'm not part of a doomed revolution. You know what I mean? We're part of something that could actually um, could actually happen, even here. And maybe it takes a long time. Maybe it takes many years. But I think it's going to be okay. Thank you, Black Knight. You have a good night, too. Um, yeah, I can sleep well at night being a communist. Exactly. Hey, Fatal Melted Wind. Welcome. We're about to wind up. So yeah, you can watch the VODs. Exactly, Exquisitor. You can say you can absolutely say the revolution is inevitable. So um, as long as we're working towards it, then we're part of the winning team. We're part of the historical side that is working for the good of the people, and that's good. That's beautiful. And when I look at people hurting each other, and I say I'm working against that. I'm doing as much as I can to stop that. Man, it really makes things clear and gives me a lot of peace. So yeah, even if it takes generations, exactly. So that's all I got to say for tonight. I just got a big bump in viewers, so appreciate y'all coming by. I'm gonna say goodnight now, but streaming Disco Elysium. I'm sure that sounds interesting too. Hey, good. Thank you, Gunslinger. I appreciate that. But I really appreciate y'all, and do whatever you can. If it's teaching other people, like if it's streaming like me, that's great. But if it's just starting a local cadre and doing local mutual aid, if that's where it starts, that's where it starts, and it's good enough. So thank y'all so much. Good night, Elisa. Good night. Appreciate y'all. Thank you, Grim. Love you, buddy. And I will see y'all on Tuesday. Das Vidania.